all this universe is pervading through my unmanifested form. All beings abide in me, but I do not abide in them. If you read both this verse and the next verse, then you will see that the Supreme Soul has two major contradictions in two verses. Common people who read the Gita and think about the Gita start scratching their heads when they read these two verses and wonder why God is saying this. The first principle that the Supreme Soul is saying in this verse is that by Him all this universe is pervaded through His unmanifested form. The second principle is that all creatures abide in the Supreme Soul and are living with the support of the Supreme Soul, but the Supreme Soul does not abide in these creatures. This is the first contradiction between the first part of this verse and the fourth part of this verse, because if the whole universe is pervaded by the Supreme Soul, then how can the Supreme Soul not abide in you? But Sri Krishna says that the Supreme Soul does not abide in any creature. We will see the second contradiction in the 5th chapter. God is in this world, but in His unmanifest form. The reason for this is that God is the king of the world and is running this world. Sri Krishna will say later in the Gita, under my guidance, nurture gives birth to all things, and by this means the world revolves. We say that the king runs the kingdom, but in this case the king is not a person who sits on the throne. We see a photo of the king everywhere, and we believe that the king runs the kingdom. But is he actually running the kingdom? No, because he does not even know where the kingdom is and how many people there are in the actual kingdom. Therefore, he is the head. A king is basically a concept. The kingdom runs with his presence, and without him the kingdom would not run. But the king is not a person, and the king is not a form. The king is a thought. The king is a power, and this power is unmanifested. We say in the world that the government runs the country, but what is the government? Is it the people sitting in parliament? No, because these people actually ruin the country and don't actually run the country. This parliament keeps changing before every 5 years. Is it the government? No. What then is the government? The policeman standing at the traffic light is a representative of the government. He is a symbol of the government. The inspector sitting at the police station is a symbol of the government. The IT officer sitting in the income tax office is a symbol of the government. But then, is this the government? The government is a concept. The king is also like this, where as soon as the king goes, then another king comes. But the kingdom keeps running. In the same way, this world keeps running, and therefore there needs to be a government or power running it. This is the power of the Supreme Soul. If you try to look at it metaphysically, then Sri Krishna is describing his unmanifested form in this verse. But look at Vyasaji's poetry. He uses the words avyakata murti, unmanifested form. Can these two words go together? Avyakta means unmanifested, and murti means form. That is what God is trying to say, that just like there is a concept of governmental power, in the same way the king is a power. If one king goes to another king, then will come. However, it is not as if God will go and another God will come. The kingdom will keep running. When Guruji went to Africa, he went and saw what he calls the Wily Games. They told him that they would like to take him for 3 days to see the games. He asked them what about these games and where they would take place. They took place in a jungle. They showed him that the wild animal parks are called games, where you see lions, giraffes, and all sorts of wildlife. While he was traveling there was a hotel, a very nice hotel. They told him that the hotel was so great that when the woman that we call the Queen of England, Elizabeth, was young in 1953, she, along with her young children, came to travel here, and the king that lived there had got news that she was coming. On the next day in the hotel, the woman, Elizabeth, had a coronation in that hotel and was given the crown there. Only then did she go back to London, because in those times there were not such fast planes to get from Africa to London. What Guruji means to say is that as soon as one king went, then the crown was placed in the head of the king's daughter, and this daughter became the queen. The kingdom continued to run. In the same way, the Supreme Soul has an unmanifested form. The form of the king that was there was for those years before her, when the king died, but the kingdom did not finish, because when the king went, another monarch came, i.e. a queen. In the same way, the Supreme Soul is continuously running a kingdom that can never have an end. This kingdom is running eternally. Srimad Adi Shankaraji writes in his commentary that this unmanifested form is one that cannot be perceived by the senses, and the Supreme Soul is such an unmanifested form. The Supreme Soul is running around the world, but the Supreme Soul is beyond the range of the senses of perception. The Supreme Soul is without form, and yet the Supreme Soul performs many different activities. How can one understand the Supreme Soul? The Supreme Soul is there in the world because this whole world is pervaded by the Supreme Soul's unmanifested form. Everything is pervaded by God. There is, therefore, only one way to understand God. In this world that keeps changing and is continuously changeable, one should look for that which is unchanging. This is the very nature of God. If we sit down to think about our lives, then it feels as if our whole lives dreams. A childhood is like a dream because it comes and goes. Youth is like a dream because when that dream finishes, then the state of youth is gone. How dreams break. We are having dreams, and our mother wakes us up early in the morning and turns on the light in our room, and our dreams break with this light. In the same way, we are drowning in a dream, but saints are like our mothers, and the Supreme Soul is also like our mothers. They wake up early in the morning while we are sleeping, and when they shine the light of knowledge, then our eyes start blinking, and our dream of life breaks. We often even do this ourselves. Youth is like a dream, and this dream breaks when we are sitting in front of the mirror, and one or two white hairs in our head shine like tube lights. Now this dream breaks, and this youthfulness goes away. When our youthfulness goes, then it is only when the first white hair grows that we know that our youthfulness has finished, and that this dream has finished. Old age is even a dream. All the different stages of life are like dreams. Not only that, but everything we become in life is a dream. If a person says that he is a husband, then this is a dream. If a person says that she is a wife, then this is also a dream. If a person says that she is a mother, then this is also a dream. If a father says he is the father, then this is also a dream. If a person says that he is a friend, then this is also a dream. Similarly, with when someone says he's an employer or someone says he's a servant, this is all dreams. As we pass through these different forms, do we see the very nature that of which is steady between all of these forms? This nature of steadiness is the life, and which is vital in the whole part of our life. And this is exactly who God is. This is, in fact, God. God never changes. When we were young, then was God young. When we were young, then was the soul inside us also young. When we become old, then did the soul also become old? When we became husbands, then did the soul also become a husband? When we became wives, then did the soul also become a wife? No, because this never changes. This is the truth. This is the supreme truth. There are two big words that Guruji likes very much in Western philosophers' use of all the time. The word being and becoming. Everything that is becoming is a dream, and a pure being is our supreme truth. This is the Supreme Soul. If you get rid of all the parts of becoming and all the illusions of becoming, then you will see what is your pure being. Your pure being is God. This is because it is only pure beings that seek to unite themselves with God. Otherwise, the rest of people are just running after becoming. Pure being is the Supreme Soul. Dreams break, but the life does not break. Childhood breaks, through time, but does life break? Youth was a dream, and it broke, but did your life break? Old age was a dream, and it can break, and birth and death are also parts of this dream. Even despite there being death, that which does not break even during death is life, we think that when a person dies, then life finishes. But this is actually incorrect. Life is an eternal existence. Life does not break. This life does not change when all the forms around it change. It cannot be pointed out with a finger, and that is why it is described in this verse and as an unmanifested form of the Supreme Soul. That is why the Gita is using these two opposite words next to each other. The unmanifested form cannot be seen, but it is there. We look at forms and become deluded because we cannot see the unmanifest behind these forms. This delusion is ignorance, and is the reason behind our pleasures and pains, our attractions and repulsions. It is said that Akbar was deluded over Birbal's daughter. Birbal's young daughter must have been beautiful, and Akbar was deluded over her. Birbal had gone out of town, and Akbar called Birbal's daughter to his palace. Birbal's daughter realized what was going on. Women have a sixth sense, whereas men only have five senses. A woman could tell by the way a person is looking at her. Akbar had sent her an invitation, but she was Birbal's daughter, and the daughter of an intelligent person, so she realized what was going on. Akbar called her to the palace, and Birbal's daughter told him that she will come to the palace whenever he would like her to, but because her father was out of town, she was alone, and Akbar should come to her house. Akbar had been deluded, and therefore when she gave the invitation, he went. Before Akbar came, Birbal's daughter had cleaned and decorated the house very nicely. Everything was colourful. Akbar therefore thought that about everything was made ready in order to welcome him, and that she was a positive about him coming over. Birbal's daughter had prepared 10 plates and had covered all of the plates with nice silk cloth. Akbar thought that she had prepared so many things for him, and therefore she definitely must have some feelings for him in her heart. Otherwise she would not have prepared those 10 plates for him. Akbar thought that everything would work out for him. Birbal's daughter told Akbar to take something. When Akbar pulled the cloth from the first dish, then there was a cut lemon, coloured green. When Akbar pulled the cloth from the second dish, there was a cut lemon, but there was some saffron put on top of it to colour it yellow. When Akbar pulled the cloth from the third dish, there was also another lemon, but it was coloured red. All the plates had cut lemons. The fourth dish had a lemon coloured white. The fifth dish had a lemon coloured blue. There was another lemon coloured black. Each and every one of these 10 dishes had lemons in different colours. Akbar got very angry and asked Birbal's daughter why she had placed lemons in each of these plates. Birbal's daughter told Akbar that he was like a father to her, and that she wanted to show him the colours on the outside are all different, but on the inside, the lemon is the same lemon. If you go to any person, then the colour on the outside will look different, but if you go inside, then any material enjoyments, objects, vasanas or material desires, etc., they're all the same thing inside. They all have the same sourness, even though they may look attractive on the outside, and the colour may look different on the outside. People get attracted by the colours. That is why the lemons were presented. How intelligent must Birbal's daughter have been? The smell of lemons make water run from people's mouths. Objects are just like this, because they make water in the form of desires run and look attractive. But as soon as you taste them, then you realize. What Guruji means to say is that the outside forms are all different, but they all have the same thing on the inside. God pervades the whole world. In the same way the soul pervades the body. Because of the Supreme Soul's inconceivable power of Maya or illusion, God's form is everywhere, and yet beings cannot recognize God and see God. Some clothes are made out of cotton, but we cannot see the cotton in these clothes. We can only see the cloth. Iron is made out of pyrites, but we cannot see the pyrites. We can only see the iron. A goldsmith told his son to bring gold from the cupboard. The son opened the cupboard, looked inside, and told his dad that there is no gold in the cupboard. The goldsmith insisted to his son that there was gold inside the cupboard. The son told his father that he looked inside, and there was no gold inside the cupboard. The father went to the cupboard and showed his son that there was indeed gold in the cupboard. The son told his father there was not gold, but necklaces, bracelets, and earrings. The father told his son that all of these were made out of gold. This is the nature of the human mind. It does not see the gold, it only sees the necklaces, the bracelets, the earrings. Human beings stop before seeing the pyrites. In the same way, humans stop before seeing the truth of God that resides in all of the forms of the world and in all of the atoms of the world. People do not see this God being manifest. People do not see God in the world. Yet God pervades the whole world. All the teachers we've had slight differences in principles, but all of them agreed on one thing, and that is God resides in each and every atom in this world. These include all the teachers of all the religions. There has not been any religion that has said that God is not in the world, but somewhere high up above. God pervades each and every place in the world. God is omnipresent, omnipotent, omniscient. In the 4th chapter of the Chandipath, it says in the Shakradi Devistit, Devyata idam jagat atma shaktya, nishesha deva hana shakti samhum nritya, which means because of the supreme power of the Supreme Soul pervades the whole world. If God pervades this whole world, then why can God not be seen? All of us have this question in our minds, that if God is in each and every atom in this world, then why can we not see God? There is a reason for this. This is because we are not ready to see the world in the way that the world really is. We keep protecting things to the world. We want the world in the way we like, and the way we see the world in the way that we like. Metaphysicists call this adhyarop, seeing the world what is in our minds. Metaphysics also give us a famous example of this. A person sees a rope to be a snake. It is a rope, but if the fear of snakes arises in one's mind, then the person will see a snake in that rope. Was there a snake there? No. The snake was in the mind, and that is what the mind sees. It sees the snake. In the same way, God is in this world, but we do not see God in the world. We see what we wish to see. We do not see God in one person. If there is a woman in the family, there are so many different ways of seeing that woman. The more people that are in the house, then the more ways there are of seeing that woman. The son sees the woman as his mother. The husband sees the woman as his wife. The mother-in-law sees the woman as her daughter-in-law. And the sister-in-law sees the woman as her sister-in-law. And the brother-in-law sees the woman as a sister-in-law. There are so many different perspectives of seeing this one woman. But do any of these people see her as a woman? Or do any of these people see the Supreme Soul residing in this woman? The perspectives of seeing this woman are different, and therefore the expectations are different. The husband has a whole set of expectations that because she is his wife, she should do all these things. The mother-in-law sees the woman as a daughter-in-law, and therefore the mother-in-law has a list of expectations that her daughter-in-law should do many things for her. In this womanness, the identity of this woman is forgotten. Guruji says, he used the housewife as an example, but that does not mean every woman has this, and she encounters a list of things that a woman should do for herself. This is because people have certain expectations. Now, we have to meet all these expectations while dancing according to the tune of all these people. We use our identities with ourself and Brahman residing within us. The world cannot see within us, and while residing in the population of the world, we cannot see the Supreme Soul residing within us. This is what happens. The Supreme Soul is there, but the Supreme Soul cannot be seen. God says in this verse that all beings abide in Him, but He does not abide in them. God is saying that all these beings exist only because of God's power. If God was not there, then this world would not have been there. It is only because God is there that this whole world is there. In the second canto of the Srimad Bhagavad, there is the Chatushloki Bhagavad, where this very same thing is said. Sri Hari, the Supreme Soul, is giving a discourse to Brahmaji, and the first verse of the Chatushlaki Bhagavad is Aham eva samavira nanya yad sada satparam pastram yate taka tovashi shatya sosyam, which means, at the beginning of the world, only I alone was there, and then the world came. I am here in the world now, and when this world is dissolved, then only I will remain. The absolute reality of the Supreme Soul is far above the appearance of things, space and time. God has already said that He pervades this whole world, but now God is saying that He does not abide in beings. This is not a contradiction. It feels like a contradiction, but then consider that faith has not arisen. The right needed to hear the 9th chapter has not arisen, and the mind is still cavilling. In the 8th chapter, God put scissors down on the floor. God does not oppose arguments in the Gita, and this is certain. God has been explaining everything with arguments up until the 8th chapter. Now God says that we have reached halfway, and it is time to put the scissors down. The 9th chapter is in the middle of the Gita. Because there are 18 chapters, there cannot be a chapter exactly in the middle. But you can say that the 9th chapter of the Gita is exactly in the middle of the Gita. We have reached halfway, and now the cavilling can be left behind. One needs this faith. God says that He does not reside in beings. Srimad Adi Shankaraji has said it very beautifully in the Shapadi. The waves are born from the sea, but the sea can never be in these waves. The world is in the Supreme Soul, but the Supreme Soul can never be in the world. This is because the Supreme Soul is much bigger. It's much greater than the world. The world has limits of time and place, and the Supreme Soul is not imprisoned within these limits. This is why Sri Krishna says in this verse that He does not abide in beings. It is the limits of the world, in that scientists say that the world came into existence a few million years ago, and slowly got colder, so creatures came into existence, and then after a few more millions of years, the world will go into a black hole, and the world will end and become destroyed. Therefore a beginning and an end has been determined for the world. But can the Supreme Soul have a beginning? No. That is why Sri Krishna said the whole world is in Him, but He is not in this world. Guruji gives a simple example to explain this. A child is in a mother's womb, but the mother is not in the child. This is simple and straightforward. The Supreme Soul abides in beings, but beings do not abide in the Supreme Soul. The second argument of the Supreme Soul is that if He resided in beings, then these beings died, and the Supreme Soul should also feel this. But this deterioration and death is not felt by the Supreme Soul. The third reason for why God does not abide in these beings is that God abides by pervading the whole world, and yet God is withdrawn. God says that with His endless form He is steady within Himself. If He were to say that in simple language, then one can say that greatness can reside in a labourer, but a labourer cannot reside in greatness and make greatness fit inside himself. Howsoever beautiful the world is, it is a labourer in comparison to God. That is why God cannot reside in the world. This concept will be explained in the next verse.